U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper warned that U.S. alliances, including the future of NATO, were in jeopardy if European countries went ahead with using Chinese Huawei technology in their 5G networks.
The company is deeply tied not only to China, but to the Chinese Communist Party.
We have shipped more than 600,000 5G AAUs over 91 commercial 5G contracts.
Where the reality we face as a nation is of ever-increasing cyber warfare and seemingly ceaseless variations of intense, perhaps even weaponized economic competition.
キース・クラック、アメリカ大手企業ドキュサインの元 CEO、2019年6月、アメリカ上院で全会一致の承認を得て、経済外交政策を担う国務次官に就任しました。
This Ohio boy, who began his journey welding parts and later had the good fortune of welding together billion-dollar companies, has had the blessing of a true all-American.
こちらのシリコンバレーの億万長者は中共に挑もうとしています。彼の任務は 5G を支配しようとする中共の計画を打ち負かすことです。
The laws of the jungle have changed. Speed now is the number one currency.
Every element of our national strength must be brought to bear on this task. Our ideals, our entrepreneurial drive, our industrious spirit, and our insistence on fair play.
Failure's not an option.
Welcome to a very special edition.
ズームイングインチャイナへようこそ。私はシャオミンです。世界秩序を変えられる米中通信戦争について3つのエピソードをシリーズでお届けします。この戦いはファーウェイで始まり、ついに自由社会対独裁の激しい戦いに発展しました。ファーウェイは中国最大の通信機器メーカーとして、世界の次世代移動通信 5G を支配する準備をしていました。果たしてアメリカは勝てるでしょうか。時を2017年冬に戻します。その日、ストーリーの主人公は中国に旅立ちました。2017年12月6日、中国南部の港湾都市広州で注目のフォーチュンブレインストームイベントが開催されました。世界トップ技術のリーダーたちが集結し、中国の政治局メンバー5人も加わり、業界の動向や中国とのビジネス関係について話し合います。アメリカ大手企業ドキサインの最高経営責任者、キース・クラックもそこにいました。当時彼はドキサインを400億ドル相当のグローバル企業に成長させ、中国を組み込むべきかを模索していました。中国は世界最大級の消費国だからです。しかし、このイベントでクラックは予期せぬ障害を感じていました。
Well, I first went to China in 1981, and I went there many times on business over the years. I always deeply admired the Chinese culture and the history, but it soon became apparent that this time it was different. I could see the overt propaganda of the Chinese Communist Party and an aggression that forebode a new set of rules were at play. It was the first time I saw their drone swarm technology and heard about the One Belt, One Road, and it looked like a military supply chain to me. The guys with the best technology win the war. These guys were catching up. And if the CCP has malign intentions, then the US and her allies were going to be caught flat-footed. I was thinking, I wonder what the folks in Washington think about this. And who's leading the government's technology strategy?
結局、クラックは中国と交渉せずに帰国し、政府関係者との情報交換が先決と考えました。なぜなら、中国への対策を知りたかったからです。次の1週間、彼はコロンビア特別区に飛び、政界で唯一の知人であるペンス副大統領を訪ねました。彼とはパデュー大学の取締役会長を務めた縁で知り合いました。
I knew no one except for VP Pence because I hired I knew him when he was the governor of Indiana, and I hired the governor of Indiana to be the president of Purdue, Mitch Daniels. He was former director of OMB. I went out to Washington. I just wanted to see if they knew what was going on. And I told him what I saw. And he goes, have you ever thought about serving your country? And my response was, that's a dream I never knew I had. He goes, can you move? I go, I can move anywhere in the world.
クラックはオハイオ州の小さな町で少年時代を過ごし、父親はドイツの移民で小さな工場を経営していました。
I was working in my dad's 5-person machine shop. Actually, the first job was cleaning the sinks, cleaning the toilets. You know, then I worked up to being a welder, and then I worked up to working on the machines. The big customers were the automotive companies, and when their business went down, ours just went absolutely flat. And I remember a year where it was just my dad and me, we were the only employees. And to watch how tough that is, but also to watch his resiliency in terms of that.
彼の父親はクラックに大学の知識を身につけ、エンジニアとして戻って従業員10名ほどの工場に成長させてほしいと希望しましたが、彼は父親の工場には戻らず、当時世界最大級の自動車メーカー、ゼネラルモーターズに入社しました。同社はクラックにパデュー大学とハーバードビジネススクールの奨学金を提供したため、父親は寛容な会社だと言っていました。卒業後、クラックは会社から昇進のファーストトラックを与えられましたが、最終的にゼネラルモーターズを去り、シリコンバレーを目指して次々と巨大な会社を設立する旅を始めました。つまり26歳の時、ゼネラルモーターズ史上最年少の副総裁に就任し、最大級の産業用ロボット製造会社 GMF を共同設立しました。その後会社を離れ、シリコンバレーで起業した後、その会社も5億ドルで売却しました。同時にベンチマークキャピタルに加入して、最初のパブリック電子商取引会社アリバを設立し、国務次官になる前に10年かけてドキサインを時価総額400億ドルの大企業に仕上げました。私たちほとんどの人の思いは同じだと思いますが、もし26歳でゼネラルモーターズの副社長に就任できたら、それはもう十分すぎます。それなのに、シリコンバレーで何度も創業する理由は何でしょうか？
Well, Simone, my friends thought I was crazy leaving Mother General Motors back then. And you can imagine what a dream come true it was. Something happened while I was running that robotics unit, making all those trips out to Silicon Valley. You know, in my eyes, Silicon Valley was the West Point of capitalism. And the objective of the game was to reinvent everything, innovate at scale. It was also a land where failure is recognized as the best teacher. And I had tasted failure right out of the gate. And that scary failure taught me a tremendous lesson about the importance of values like integrity and trust. You know, I learned not to be afraid to jump in water over my head. And even though it's scary, it's also an adrenaline rush. And after a while, it becomes fun. And it even becomes addicting. And when you become addicted to it, you just have to disrupt and challenge the status quo wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And I don't know, maybe that's the first step to becoming a transformational leader.
2019年、アメリカは現状を打破する人がどうしても必要でした。そこで彼は国務次官の仕事を託され、中国に専念することにしました。
I fully appreciate the enormity and gravity of this role, especially in a time where the reality we face as a nation is of ever-increasing cyber warfare and seemingly ceaseless variations of intense, perhaps even weaponized economic competition. Our rivals are playing the long game, and they're playing for keeps. A four-dimensional game of economic, military, diplomatic, and cultural chess, with little respect for human rights, intellectual property, international law, transparency, the environment, or sovereignty of nations. In order to prevail, we must play the game better and take economic statecraft to the next level. There is no substitute for American diplomacy.
クラックにとって経済の公平さは個人的な問題でもあるのです。
Growing up in Ohio, I was brought up with good old-fashioned Midwestern values. If you were honest and you worked hard enough, any dream you had could come true. And my childhood experience in a machine shop gave me a love for manufacturing. And my dad would always explain how vital small companies like his were to American industry because they were the heart and soul of the U.S. economic engine. My dad taught me that the key to America's manufacturing prowess was fair competition in the marketplace. That drives productivity, which increases the standard of living. He would always say, this is the beauty of free enterprise. Over the years, it was painful for me to watch the devastation of the manufacturing business in the Midwest. But then I could see China Inc.'s weapons of mass production used in state subsidies, currency manipulation, all kinds of things that systematically targeted one industry after another. When you've got to do that joint venture in China to have access to the big market, coercive forced tech transfer just happens. And when you build a plant, that means not only handing over the blueprints, but also the process engineering know-how as you train their workforce. I believe in the beauty of the free market system, but when somebody comes in the market and doesn't play fairly by the rules, then the market is no longer free.
ファーウェイの台頭は数十年にもわたる綿密な計画の下で進められてきました。ファーウェイは中共から多くの保護を受け、例えば外国メーカーと競合する際、数十億ドルの資金提供がありました。さらに強制技術移転及び一連の技術窃盗なども加わり、ファーウェイの管理層と中共は何年も費やして、やっと今日の地位にまで仕上げたのです。ファーウェイは1987年に退役軍人任正非によって設立されました。会社の初期契約の多くは解放軍との締結でした。ファーウェイは国家の支援と外国企業による強制技術移転に頼りながら成長してきました。また、シスコのルータソフトなどの技術窃盗もファーウェイを後押ししました。北京がアメリカとその同盟国の 5G の使用を規制または拒否することに、ワシントン両党は懸念しています。しかし2020年初めまで、世界は中共が主導する 5G サプライヤーの次世代グローバル通信を防ぐには、時すでに遅しと考えていました。2020年1月、イギリスはファーウェイの 5G 参入を許可しました。それにより、ロンドンとアメリカ当局の間で緊張が高まり、ペンス副大統領は NBC の経済ニュースのインタビューで、イギリス政府の決定に失望感をにじませました。
Well, I think the president's been very clear. Secretary of State Pompeo reiterated it this week. The United States is very disappointed. We just don't believe that utilizing the assets, the technology of Huawei is consistent with the security or privacy interests of the UK, of the United States. It remains a real issue between our two countries.
差し迫ったファーウェイの脅威に対処するために両党は団結しました。2月14日の2020年ミュンヘン安全保障会議でのナンシー・ペロシ下院議長の中国人民代表大会のリーダーとの激しい応酬の際の発言内容は、ペンス副大統領と一致していました。
This is so predictable. I don't know why it's not so self-evident to everyone that you do not want to give that power to an entity created by the People's Liberation Army to have that line of communication, 5G, dominated by an autocratic government.That does not share our values.
Hello, I'm from the National People's Congress of China. My knowledge of how the world works is that technology is a tool. And China, since its reform started 40 years ago, have introduced all kinds of Western technologies. Microsoft, IBM, Amazon, they are all active in China.All the technologies came from Western countries, from the developed world. China has maintained its political system. The system led by the Communist Party has become successful. It's not threatened by the technologies. How come if Huawei's technology with 5G is introduced into Western countries, then it will threaten the political system? Do you really think the democratic system is so fragile that it could be threatened by this single high-tech company of Huawei?
Let me just say to you that are applauding back there that Huawei was created by reverse technology of American initiatives. That was one of the main ways that they got started. We know the capability that Huawei has. We do not want to emulate the Chinese system. We don't want to be arresting millions of Uyghurs, threatening this Tibet in terms of its culture, religion, and faith, undermining democracy in Hong Kong, etc. So it isn't a question of we have Huawei and we are a model, so why are you afraid of Huawei? We understand the power of technology, and I tell you unequivocally, without any hesitation, be very careful when we go down this path, unless you want to end up with a society like China.
アメリカ指導者の警告があったにもかかわらず、ファーウェイの主導的地位は圧倒的でした。ペロシ議長の講演から1週間後、ロンドンでのある記者会見で、ファーウェイテレコムキャリアのテイウン社長はこう発表しました。
We have shipped more than 600,000 5G AUs over 91 commercial 5G contracts.
ファーウェイと契約を結んだ91カ国のうち、欧州が47カ国も占めています。ほとんどがアメリカの同盟国です。ファーウェイの脅威は以前から議論されてきましたが、なぜ同盟国らはアメリカの意見を聞かなかったのでしょうか。
You know, it was interesting because I remember when I first came into government, you know, just a little over a year and a half ago, and they said, hey, you got to go over to the Italian embassy, your counterparts there, the economic minister, and we want you to have a pull aside and have the 5G talk with them. I go, well, what's the 5G talk? And they said, well, tell them don't buy Huawei. I go, well, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. I go, where I come from in Silicon Valley, you don't even mention your competitor's name. You know, somebody says, don't buy that. You go to your chief of staff. Hey, check out Huawei. It must be pretty good. So we based it on internationally, you know, accepted trust standards. That was really the key point. And I think up to this point, the Americans were going over and banging on the tables and saying, don't buy Huawei. Nobody likes to be told what to do.
アメリカ 5G 外交の欠陥を見抜いたクラックは、ワシントンの誰もがやっていないことをしました。
What we said is, well, let's just treat all these countries and all these telcos as customers. And the customer's always right.
顧客の要望に応えるため、クラックは自分のチームを率いて、リスニングツアーを展開し、海外の要人たちと数十回の二国間会議を行いました。議論が中国に向けられたとき、大臣たちは意外と同じことに触れました。
Foreign ministers, economic ministers, finance ministers, their deputies, more than 60 bilateral meetings with my foreign counterparts. And it seemed like almost all the countries were terrified of China. Nobody even wanted to use the words China or Huawei. The big aha came when I asked about their relationship with China. And they'd say, well, they're an important trading partner for sure. But then they'd lean in and they go, but we don't trust them. This happened over and over again. That's when I told the team, we're going to make our strategic positioning all about trust. Nobody trusts these guys. All I know is that trust is the most important word in any language.
Trust is the basis of every relationship, business, personal, or otherwise. And, you know, if you ask me to sum up DocuSign in one word, it's trust.
圧倒的な存在感を示すファーウェイですが、彼はファーウェイの脆弱さを知っていました。それは誰もがファーウェイを信用していないことです。クラックはグローバルなネットワークの設立を通して、業界の仕組みを変えていく経験を持っています。過去の40年間で同じ戦術でハイテク市場を変革しましたが、今度は自国を守るために用います。
What we've done at all the companies is what we affectionately call the playbook. And that's the vision, the mission, the values, the team rules, the long-term goals, the strategy, and the execution, like upside down triangle, because you can have the greatest strategy in the world, but if you can't execute, you're going to fail every time. And if you have maybe a pretty good strategy, but you cannot execute, you're going to win every time.
このストーリーの3つの基本目標を実現するために、当面の急務はまず、中共の 5G 支配計画を阻止することです。次に、あらゆる分野で中国企業と競争ができ、持続可能なモデルを提供し、最後に 5G をよりどころとして、民主国家連盟と企業連盟を構築することです。
It brought over from Silicon Valley 12 private sector. And if there's anything that we knew is that everybody wants to go with the leader and you want to buy from the leader. And in a rapidly changing market, leadership is not defined by size, it's defined by momentum. So the objective of the game was to take away the momentum from Huawei. And in order to do that, we needed an opening salvo. to get them backpedaling because they were being proactive and the rest of the world was being reactive. And so that opening salvo was what the press later called the 5G trifecta.
5月15日は 5G3 連勝のリリース日です。その日の朝、ハイテク産業にとって驚くべきニュースが飛び込んできました。
Taiwanese chip giant TSMC has finalized its plan to build a 12-inch wafer fab in Phoenix, Arizona. The project was approved at a board of directors meeting on Tuesday.
TSMC は120億ドルを費やして最先端の5ナノメートル半導体の製造工場を建設し、アメリカ史上最大の企業リターン現象となりました。TSMC はアメリカで1600のハイテク雇用を創出し、産業エコシステムのサプライヤーをもたらすでしょう。
They for sure are the most important foreign company to United States national security. They might even be the most important. I mean, we got defense companies, but they are critical. They're head and shoulders above everybody else in terms of fabricating the world's most sophisticated semiconductors, which are the basis for everything from 5G to AI, everything. That was a big deal, and we were able to close that in 2 weeks. There was a lot of discussion. There was a lot of analytical work. We had a great team working on that. And we had two theories that if we could get them to announce that they were going to build a plant in the U.S., two things would happen. One, it would be a catalyst for Congress to put some serious funding into bringing our semiconductor manufacturing back to the U.S. We said do all the manufacturing here, and now it's only like 12%. And you really need that manufacturing base to develop the next generation of equipment. So it was strategic. It was more than just having it sourced in the United States. And so that's when we worked with Senator Corrin and Senator Warner, total bipartisan, on the CHIP Act. And that was for $30 billion. And that passed unanimously in the House and 96-4 in the Senate. That was a big win. The second theory that we had was that it would be a catalyst to get the other semiconductor companies to onshore. And indeed, that did happen. Matter of fact, I think Samsung's going to even build one even bigger than that. And we knew they were waiting in the wings. Also for the U.S. chip manufacturers, because the U.S. chip manufacturers had moved like to build it in Israel, Ireland, Malaysia, and we got a lot of proposals. So I'm sure the team back in Washington is working on that right now. So both those theories really proved out. It was really a catalyst.
5G や複雑なスマートフォンには高度なチップが必要ですが、TSMC はファーウェイの唯一のハイエンドチップのサプライヤーです。これは 5G セキュリティにおいて大変重要なステップです。アメリカチームはさらに勢いづきました。
The Clean Path program, which basically calls for any network traffic coming in and out of diplomatic facilities, whether it's here or abroad, all our embassies, it requires a clean path. So in other words, it's trusted, it's reliable, it cannot have touched, for example, a Huawei antenna.
これは 5G3 連勝の第2弾です。クリーンパス構想の執行はアメリカの国務省に限った話ではありません。この公表はすべての賛同した国や企業の後押しをしています。この戦略の天才的なところは、ファーウェイ設備を検討中の通信事業者のコストが上がることにあるのです。
Say you're a telco operator and you have Huawei. It means you gotta put a Ericsson or Nokia or Samsung antenna right next to it. You, in essence, gotta double your cost. And so that was raising the cost for the telco operators. You know, if we could have done it for all United States, we would have, but we could only start with what we could control, and that was the United States State Department. Now I think you'll see it roll out with all the different U.S. agencies. We got some countries to come on board as well. So it's getting up to a critical mass of network traffic.
News just breaking now on Huawei. Reuters is reporting that the Trump administration will further tighten restrictions on the Chinese company. That report says the Commerce Department will move to prevent Huawei from obtaining semiconductors without a special license. That includes chips made by foreign firms developed or produced using U.S. software or technology. The report says the new actions are aimed at preventing Huawei from circumventing U.S. export controls.
これが 5G3 連勝の最後の一手。国務省チームは商務省と再び連携して ファーウェイが必要とする高度な半導体を取得させないことに成功しました。これにより、6ヶ月後にファーウェイはスマートフォン事業の売却を余儀なくされました。
Up to this point, we were just focusing on the U.S. semiconductor companies don't ship, but they were getting semiconductors, particularly from TSMC and other countries, Samsung. And so we were able to put export controls on those companies because the United States controls the semiconductor machinery business, the equipment business, and also the design. So that was a way to be able to really loop in everybody. So it really just cut them off for the most sophisticated 5G semiconductors and also for their phone business, which was their cash cow. They had to sell their phone business because they were running out of chips.
圧倒的な 5G3 連勝の後に、クラックらは新民主連盟を構築するために、グローバルムーブメントを開始しました。
The laws of the jungle have changed. It is about speed. Speed now is the number one currency in business today. And you need momentum for that digital transformation. And the big, they no longer eat the small. The quick eat the slow. The future of your company depends on it. It depends on action now, not 1 year from now. And success needs no explanation. Failure needs no alibi. Failure's not an option. It's go time.